My day has been pretty solid as well. The morning went pretty well. We went to Trader Joe's because I had to drop Jamie off this morning because of tonight's event, and we went to Trader Joe's, and when I went to go check out, I realized something that I had all this nice food and all this nice stuff in my basket. But then I realized something very critical about shopping.
What is that?
Money changes everything, man.
Well, let me just say that if there were tomatoes in that cart, I'd be throwing them at your face right now.
And welcome back, everybody, to the best music podcast on all sides of planet Earth. This podcast is called Hey, Listen to This. And first of all, thank you for listening. Second of all, this podcast is hosted by two dashingly good-looking men who share the same middle name. I'm the one. I'm the only. I'm the one who is apparently hyped up on caffeine. Ryan James Kearns.
And I am the one, the only, currently getting hyped up on pizza rolls, Matthew James Derzick. And for those of you who do not know what this show is, well, it's right there in the title. Hey, listen to this. Me and Ryan, we look at each other every week, one way or another, and say, hey, listen to this. And that entails getting ourselves acclimated with albums that are either prevalent or new or have some sort of theme around them, and maybe just stuff we like to listen to. And right now we are in the midst of March, which means it is Women's History Month. And Ryan, how did we kick off the month last week?
So we kicked it off with the 1995 album by Alanis Morissette called Jagged Little Pill. And, I was very happy that we were able to finally talk about that record because I knew that album was very important in terms of a historical context, in terms of, how it paved the way for countless amount of female musicians going forward, and even outside the historical context, that album was really, really good. Songs like Ironic, You Oughta Know, also, by the way, apparently we missed a huge thing in our discussion of You Oughta Know, because apparently the line that Alanis sings about, hey, sorry for bothering you at dinner, that directly points at Uncle Joey from Full House as the object of anger in that song. But shout out to my wife for pointing that out to me. She kind of freaked out at me in the car the other day when I told her that. I digress. It was a great time for me. I really like the album, and honestly, if I ever get the opportunity, I actually might pick it up on vinyl someday.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a bad idea. I already have it on CD, and it's a really, really good album. And no disrespect to you for the whole not knowing the dinner line. I didn't know that either, and even then, we still kind of always knew it was Uncle Joey, time in, time out. So, heading from a 90s album that featured some well-known songs that sort of changed the landscape of music, to an 80s album that we may discover did the same thing. This week, for Women's History Month here on Hey Listen to This, we are going with an album I chose last week from 1983 entitled She's So Unusual by Cyndi Lauper. Now, what is a Cyndi Lauper? Basically, she is I believe, British singer-songwriter who made it big in the U.S. and across the world around this time of this debut album, and is somewhat synonymous, both aesthetically and musically, for being one of the pioneering headliners of the 1980s, because of songs and music videos such as Girls Just Want to Have Fun, Time After Time, a little further on down the line, True Colors. And it was not just the music, it was her look that was sort of pinned to the growing aesthetic of the then newly formed music television known as MTV. And this album is very much synonymous with, again, what people think of when they think of the 80s. just the high end keyboard, synths, production, her vocals, which we'll get into throughout the album, and just the overall aesthetic. I mean, if you look at the album cover for She's So Unusual and you look at any of those videos, you'll see a style that's sort of very wild and away from the status quo. Very much a comparison would be today someone like Chapel Roan. Like you see Chapel Roan sort of dolled up in this almost like cartoonish presence, very I want to say Pixie Girl energy because I am way out of my league when discussing anything like that, but very much a rebellious princess type of independent girl vibe. And again, that spread like wildfire throughout the late 80s, and as we'll probably discuss later, sort of got usurped by someone else. But as far as my relationship with Cyndi Lauper and her music, it's basically this album. I'm not going to pretend like I've listened to later cuts or deeper cuts or anything like that. No, it's pretty much this album. And yeah, that's where I stand with Cyndi Lauper and She's So Unusual.
So for me, my experience is I knew that she was a critical figure in the early 80s for shaping and help form an 80s female artist sound. So I at least knew that much. And tracks, I knew of tracks Girls Just Want to Have Fun. I mean, I kind of alluded that at the end of last week's review. And I also, of course, know the song Time After Time. I mean, who doesn't know that song? I mean, if you don't know that song, welcome to the world. It's nice here. Maybe sometimes. But other than that, gonna be honest with you, I knew nothing that she has, produced, made, recorded. I just knew of her, and I knew 2 songs. I kind of knew True Colors thanks to the NBC sitcom Superstore, where in one of the earlier seasons that song was featured in an episode just briefly, and then it super cuts to Nicki Minaj's Anaconda, which was a huge contrast in that episode of that series, but I digress. But yeah, that basically wraps up my experience with Miss Lauper and what she has done, and at least my knowledge of her prior to discussing this album here today.
Yeah, and one last note before we get into the album proper, which is that she also did the theme song to the movie The Goonies, which is also a staple of 1980s culture, and I feel if we didn't mention that, we'd probably get some blowback for that. So, yeah, I am ready to discuss She's So Unusual. Are you, Ryan?
Yeah, I'm ready. And you know what? I'm going to change up the format here a little bit. I'm going to start by, taking the heat on Money Changes Everything, if that's okay with you.
I'm perfectly fine with that. Go for it.
Just changing things up, just wanted to, experiment with stuff here. So, yeah, Money Changes Everything. So, fun fact, this is not the first time I heard this song in my life. The first time I actually heard it, the band Against Me covered it in one of their earlier albums. And, that brought a whole different sonic energy compared to what this track is bringing to the table. Right away for me, I'm just gonna come out and say it. I hate to start out the album review on such a sour note, but this is my least favorite track on the album, and it's mainly because I can't get over Cyndi's vocals. They just sound so poorly delivered. They're very nasally. It just grinds up against my ears, and the instrumentation's not doing enough to carry it over the finishing line for me to at least for me to ignore the vocals. But vocals aside, with this track here, you get very bright guitars that You're gonna have that throughout the whole album, but like that was one thing that kind of just stuck out to me. Like the guitars and the drums, they were like highly produced, man. Like it was the 1980s, like in mid 80s. You're gonna have that. That was the sound of the times, but that wasn't. That didn't take away from the experience. It was basically like a very. It was just a foundation that the rest of the song could have expanded upon, and. The only thing I gotta mention about Money Changes Everything on the instrumental front is the harmonica solo. I actually found it to be pretty decent. It was a nice touch. And the dual vocal approach here works well. And on the lyrical end, I mean, not much here to have the song really stand out other than, the song's basically about how money changes everything. And some people have more interpreted this song to be more specifically about the music business. But, I don't know. Like, for me, money changes everything. Like, maybe if I didn't hear the Against Me version of this song first off, maybe I would have a different, appreciation for it. But, dude, I'm going to be honest with you. I can't get over how Cyndi sounds, at least coming right out of the gate. And before I pass it off to you, for full disclosure, I only have a bottom track in terms of a bottom, anything. And I have a top three. So, in terms of, negativity, this is the most negative I'm going to get in the review.
I, too, also have a top three and a bottom one. This is not my bottom one. Although I do agree with you, her singing isn't necessarily great on this track, but it didn't turn me off either. It sounded very of its time, shall we say. Like, there's a track later on down the line, spoiler alert, that does commit those same infractions in my ears that it does to you on this song, but it's not this song. But aside from that, I think the production's pretty good. It definitely blasts you right out of the gate and lets you know, hey, this is the 1980s. And it sounds good with her singing. The keyboards sound very 80s-ish. It's funny that you said it was a harmonica solo. I'm not 100% sure if it was a harmonica or its keyboard equivalent, the melodica. It sounded a little too processed, if you will, to sound like a true harmonica, but that's kind of besides the point. Lyrically, I completely agree with you. Everything you need to know about the song lyrically is in the title of the song. Money changes everything. And the lyrics don't really have much else to say other than that. Basically it's a lead up to say that money changes everything. And the only other note I have about this that you haven't added is the fact that, ironically enough, you mentioned that you heard the song as it was covered by Against Me. This song itself is a cover. This is a cover of a song. I don't remember who it was by, but I hadn't realized until I read the review of this album by Robert Kreisgau, who mentions that this is one of two songs on the album that were meant to be covered and covered properly by her. And this isn't in my top three either, but it's not my bottom one. To me, this is a relatively decent introduction to the sound of this album.
So the cover that you're talking about, because I actually have the information pulled up right in front of me, the original song is by apparently one Tom Gray. Shout out to Tom Gray. I hope you're doing well. Well, I mean, you might not be alive at this moment. I digress. But
that counts for doing well in 2025.
Oh man, you are so true, man. But yeah. I also did dive into the Wikipedia page and found that it was actually a melodica, not a harmonica. So you were right on that regard. So, but yeah, overall though, when we get further down into the album, because I'm kind of curious to see if we're going to align with the one track that you had issues with, how the vocal delivery was, recorded. I wonder if that's the same track that I'm also going to identify, but the rest of the backing of the instrumentation, the songwriting, does enough lifting to carry it over the threshold to keep it out of my bottom. But, we'll get there when we get there.
We will get there. And it might be that track. It might be, but we will see.
So, are you ready to find out why girls just want to have fun?
Yes. The next track is Girls Just Want to Have Fun. And if you don't know this song, again, you need to tell me how much that rock sells for that you're living under, because this song has pretty much been everywhere for the last 40 plus years. And deservedly so, because, it starts off with that iconic riff, that ba-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da. And what makes this song as catchy as it is, what makes this song as iconic as it is Cyndi Lauper's vocals. Because she is pushing into the red throughout the entire song. Like, for those of you unaware with music, there's the thing called the staff, which is the 5 lines that dictate where notes are. If the staff is water, her hair is dry. She is singing so high throughout this entire song and sells it note by note by note by note. And it works so well. And then when you get the background vocals towards the later song where the girl's just saying, wanna have fun, it adds so much to it. Ironically enough, this song, which is basically a female empowerment anthem about divorcing yourself from traditional female subordination, how in the lyrics she's basically saying, listen, mom and dad, I get you want me to live the right life, but some nights I just want to get out and party. I just want to have fun. And it's such a strong lyric centered around female independence. This was written by a dude, a guy by the name of Robert Hazard. He wrote the lyrics to this song. And that just kind of shook me. I was like, hold on. You mean to tell me one of the ladies on the floor dance anthems at every wedding you've been to since 1985 was written by a guy? That is pretty ironic. But it's not enough of a strong irony to keep me from saying, surprise, surprise, this is my favorite song on the album.
Man, in the words of Alanis Morissette, isn't it pretty ironic that a female empowerment anthem is written by a guy? Anyways, sorry.
You could say it's like rain on your wedding day.
Yeah, I had to walk right on through it, man. So, yeah, this song here, it's a classic, like you mentioned. I'm gonna come out right in the gate and say like this does land in my top 3. After I give my thoughts and feelings about the track, I'll let you know where it does land. So I'm right there with you that the vocal delivery on here is, I would easily say, 50 times better compared to the previous track. And it is a highlight on the track. Without Cyndi Lauper's vocal delivery, the track doesn't work nearly as well. And outside of the vocals, again, you're getting the guitars that are very bright and the drums are highly produced, but, they work out very well. They're doing a lot more heavy lifting compared to, the previous track. And another thing that I really did like, an underrated moment, is the little synth parts that are smashed right between the guitars and the drums. They're laying down such a great foundation for the rest of the song to operate from. And along that, with the synths, I like how they're doing random cascading note hits. They definitely add to an excellent backdrop. That this track is great enough in its own right that you can just put it on in the background and you can basically appreciate it as is. But it's when those little moments pop up for my ears, and whenever I'm walking my dog, doing dishes, just whenever I'm just specifically listening to music and I catch that, I'm like, oh, hey, I like that. That's fun. The backing vocals in this track do a good job, as well as the previous track. And one of my lyrically, there's not much here to highlight, but one moment that I did like, though, was in the third verse. She's talking about, how she wants to be the one to walk in the sun, basically saying, hey, she wants to be the one to, enjoy her life. And, I think it was a pretty universal message, but it's an important message for, women to hear, because sometimes they feel like they get stereotyped into some certain kind of like, servant role, but they should have the right to like, actually enjoy their lives. For me, Girls Just Want to Have Fun did not land as my top song on the album. It didn't land as my second favorite song on the album. It landed at number 3.
So it's number 3 for you. Okay, interesting. Because I have a very strong feeling I know what one of your top 2 songs is. I'm curious to find out what the other one is, because, I'll get into my thoughts about that. But I'm glad you like this song too, because it is a classic, and it's funny how you mentioned like you could put this in the background, and the only reason it becomes a background song is because it's so ubiquitous. You kind of already know what's coming, and it just makes for something that, again, has stayed the test of time. Whether you're at a dance, whether you're at a wedding, whether you're listening to the radio, whether you're listening to some friend's Spotify, if you're out shopping, chances are you've heard this song at least 12 times in your life. So, and it's for good reason, because again, despite how ubiquitous it is, it still hits with those lines. Like, it's much better lyrically than Money Changes Everything. That's not hard to say. And it just hits every single time. It's a great track.
So, moving over to When You Were Mine, this is a track, if I had to be honest with you, if the verses were a little bit more well polished on the songwriting front, it could have popped Girls Just Want to Have Fun out of my top 3. As controversial of a statement as that is. But the reason why I like this song so much, that it could have popped a classic out of my top 3, is just the chorus. How, like, Cyndi's doing that call and response, and how it just flows so well. It's one of the... It's not a top song for me, but, like, that chorus right there is probably my favorite chorus on the whole album, and it's one of my favorite sonic moments throughout the whole experience for me. And like, outside of that chorus though, like, the vocal delivery is solid, drums again here are again highly produced, and like, just in the verses, like, it's an interesting choice with the synths doing, like, some interesting work alongside, like, random guitar hits. Like, it's a little bit of a spacey effect. And, like, again, here, lyrically, like, you're not going to get much here. And I feel like the same could be said for, like, a lot of the tracks on the album. But, maybe we can, if there's a debate to be had, we'll have it. But basically, this just basically seems like a track that's about, oh, hey, looking back on, like, when a relationship was had. And yeah, other than that, I mean, the only other thing I gotta mention is just the instrumental break is a bit weird, with how, like, it just gets, like, these weird, like, random swirly noises. However, though, When You Were Mine, it's a decent track for me.
It's a decent track for me, too. Pretty much I'm right there with you as far as it being pretty solid. I think Cyndi sings pretty well on this track. I think the production is pretty smooth. I think I kind of noticed that instrumental breakdown that you were talking about, how it sounded a little out there. And the whole thing does kind of sound, in a sense, to have moments that are sort of bubbling under the surface of what is otherwise just a pretty streamlined 80s album track. The only caveat I have with what you said is that you said that if the chorus was a little bit better and the lyrics were a little bit better, because for the second time in 3 songs, we have a cover on this album, and this song was initially written by one of the greatest stars of all time, Prince. Prince wrote this song. This is a cover of a Prince song.
Oh, well, shout out to Prince. I hope you're doing well. I mean, oh man,
oh wow, woo boy, oh my goodness, that was dark. That was dark, and I appreciate that.
It's
But
a way that I'm processing 2025, man.
right, exactly. But no, Prince did write this song, and I think it was originally off of his 1980 album "Dirty Mind." And weirdly enough, I feel like even if you didn't realize it was a Prince cover, you could kind of tell it was a Prince cover because the way the vocal line goes sort of very seems reminiscent of like Prince's like early smooth R&B days. And Lauper does a pretty solid job of covering the Purple One to a pretty solid level. I haven't. I was gonna listen to the original in lieu of this review, but I didn't quite get there, so I'll have to check it out after the fact. But other than that, yeah, this is a solid album track. I'd say it's probably somewhere in the middle, probably. Well, considering some of the other tracks are pretty good, I would say probably like right down the middle for this track.
Yeah, I would say probably if I had to rank this like 1 through like 12 here because there's 12 tracks on the album, that I'd rank this probably like maybe the 4 or 5 range. I mean, technically, based on like how I discussed it, it should be number 4 because as I said it could have taken out "Girls Just Want to Have Fun." Maybe my opinion will change as we like get further into the album, but shuffling over to the other big track on the album, "Time After Time," and Matthew, I'm gonna let you kick off the discussion here.
Yeah, this is another song that I think doesn't need a whole hell of a lot of introduction. This is another classic that has not only been played itself many times, but I know has been covered many times. The version that comes to mind immediately is one that my girlfriend Rachel has on her Spotify, which is a live cover by Pink, which is pretty good in of itself, worth checking out. But Cyndi Lauper wrote it first and sang it first, and this is her first song on the album, which she had some hand in writing. It's a really good write because even though it's not like Shakespearean in its lyrical depth, basically it does a good job of creating a scene of wonder and romanticism of trying to get through life and needing that extra someone to help guide you along. And it goes right into that hook that says you know you know if you fall, I will catch you, I will be waiting time after time. Like basically saying, listen, whenever you're there or whenever you need me, I'll be there. And it's a sentiment that's been throughout pop music well before, well after this song, but it just works so well because the way she writes this track doesn't seem super like traditional, like line, A, B, A, B. Like there are moments, particularly whenever you feel it's about to go into the chorus, where she sings time after some time, like she's that little cutoff that's in the middle there is a really nice songwriting move. And again, it's probably ubiquitous to the point where people are just kind of like, oh, this song, but in the context of this album, it still stands out as a strong song about, again, finding that someone, being romantic. And I do have it in my top 3. It's at number 2.
So, yeah, "Time After Time," like Matt was alluding to with his discussion, and how I basically led up the whole intro to the discussion here. It's the other classic off the album, and for me, it's reminiscent of how I reacted to songs like "Jesus, etc.," where it's just even like in the previous review that we did, "Head Over Feet," where it's just such a simple love song that it's just so good. Like I know people can maybe roll their eyes, be like, "Oh no, this song," but it deserves its accolades. And it's not even for the fact because I would say for the most part, Cyndi doesn't belt out any high notes here, and no shade to Mariah Carey or Whitney Houston or any other big pop divas out there that deliver these big old love ballads that have them hitting 3 octave high notes in a row. No offense to them, but when I hear love songs like this, where it's just such a simple, like, presentation, but it's done so effectively on the vocal front, like, it makes me believe it maybe a little bit more. Like, I might be a little bit weird when it's with me saying that. Outside of the vocals, though, like, the instrumentation's doing a fantastic job, like, laying down an excellent, like, foundation for Cyndi to deliver this song. Like, the synth swells that occur, the random guitar licks that happen, they only add excellent textures for the song to operate within. And, like, just the breathy outro that you kind of mentioned, like, that's a excellent touch as well. And like I said, this is a perfect love song. You get the sentiment, like you kind of alluded to. If you're lost, you can look and you can find me time after time. And that's basically love at the end of the day. Like, the ability to rely on somebody else when you need that other person, and that reliability. That's love in a nutshell. Hate to say, ladies and gentlemen, but yeah, time after time is a fantastic song, man.
It is. And yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the instrumentation as well, because, again, it's one of those things that after repeated listens you kind of take for granted. But what makes it work so well, I mean, the guitar is just, again, iconic and yet sort of flamboyant at the same time. It keeps everything in tempo, and it just sort of goes all over the place at the same time. And the drums, particularly the way it just sort of... It's subtle, but whenever the snare drops out, the rim shots on the snare, that ticking sound, whenever that drops out, you notice it. Like, it's something that, again, is not necessarily super technically proficient. This isn't like Mike Portnoy or Neil Peart on the drums here, one would think. But it is still a strong presence of professionalism in that, and it makes the song work and sound as iconic as it is. And I don't think you said it outright, but I'm pretty sure I can guess where this is in your top 3.
Yeah, I specifically didn't include that because I was just like, I wanted to include a funny bit whenever we say, oh, hey, yeah, you didn't include this. But yeah, you want to take a random guess here?
It's number 1.
Yeah, it's number 1 with a bullet, man. Like, I absolutely love this song, man. It's such a good song.
It is a very good song and worthy of repeated listens over and over. Now, I own this record on vinyl, so I know for a fact that we have reached the end of side A of this record. So before we get to side B, Ryan, I have a question for you.
What is that question?
Okay, make that 2 questions. No, kidding. If people are listening to us and they like what they hear and they want to continue supporting us in whatever it is that we do here on Hey Listen to This, how can they support us?
So the number one way that they can, continue to support us to make sure that we keep up the momentum that we've been, doing with, churning out these episodes week in and week out is, I would say the number one way is just to take a look at all of our different episodes that we've released, because we're like almost into the 70 count of episodes with this. We're coming up on it relatively soon. So like I can guarantee, like even outside of like this album discussion, you can probably find a review or two of albums that you're familiar with that you can just throw it on in the background or listen to our thoughts and opinions, because I would say over time, like our ability to review music and dissect music has changed drastically, considering since our very first review, which was the Killers, Hot Fuss, but pivoting over to the other ways that people can help support the show. So besides listening to other episodes, make sure that you subscribe to stay up to date with our episodes on any podcasting platform that you're currently listening to us on. Like, if you know how to stay up to date, follow, subscribe, do whatever it takes to stay up to date. And then the other thing is leave a positive review on that podcasting platform of choice if you have the ability to do so. And if you're listening to us on the YouTubes, make sure that you give a thumbs up to this video, leave a comment down below what you think about this episode and our review as a whole. And If you want to stay up to date even further, make sure you follow us on the socials. We're heavily in the metaverse. Like, I just realized that we have a Facebook, we have Instagram, we have Threads. We also have Blue Sky too. But we don't have an X. We used to have an X, but no more. And then I can't bring myself to even look at Truth Social. So I mean, that place doesn't exist for a reason. But yeah, make sure you find us on the social medias that I just described. Our user handle is TT Hey Listen. And also, in addition to all that, if you are listening to us right now and you want us to cover a specific album, shoot us an email at ttklisten@gmail.com.
And again, to anyone who has done any of those things so far and continue to support us, we thank you for all that you have done. And we keep looking forward to having you as part of the Hey Listen to This crowd, because we love doing this, and we love the fact that you are listening to us do this, because it is a great, great time. Heading back into Cyndi Lauper's She's So Unusual, we enter side B with the song She Bop, and Ryan, it is your turn.
So, she bop, he bop, a we bop, I bop, you bop, they bop. What a good chorus, man. I love that chorus. So yeah, outside of the chorus, the instrumentals, they are so tight in, like, at least starting out the track here. And look, you hear that lick, that da 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 da. It's almost just like, reminiscence of the Monsters theme song. Like maybe with like a little bit more crunchy guitars behind it. But yeah, I love that. Like I mentioned, the fun chorus, it definitely can get stuck in your head. It's so simple, but I love it so much. And, I was even taking a look at the lyrics, like, a couple days ago in preparation for, the review here today. And I was just like, oh, I know what this song's about. With lyrics of, do I go out with a lion's roar? Yeah, I want to go south and get me some more. Like, come on. The song's about female masturbation. So, anyways, and like I kind of had a silent chuckle to myself whenever I realized that that's what Genius.com alluded to as well. I'm like, oh, hey, I'm getting smarter at my lyrical dissection here. But, yeah. And another moment that I really did love lyrically is when she's talking about, like, she better get a chaperone because she can't stop messing with the danger zone. That's a hilarious line, man. I love it so much. And, like, outside of that, the lyrical nature, the chorus, the instrumentals, like the whistling section, it's pretty solid. It was a nice touch. And another moment that I picked up today on like my last listen of the track before doing the review here with you is that there's breathy sections there that only adds to, like, the song's meaning. So yeah, I bop with this song here, to say the least. So much it has landed in my top 3. We're completing the trilogy here with She Bop landing at number 2 on my top 3 on this album.
That is very respectable. I pretty much agree with a lot of the things that you said. Again, my first note is basically, gee, I wonder what this song is about. And it's so, like, obvious that just a couple years later, for those of you who do not know, there used to be this weird, stupid thing called the Parents Music Resource Council, and they released a list of songs known as the Filthy 15, which they consider to be the 15 filthiest songs that were out there in the public sphere. And this song was one of them. And the list has some other artists on there, like I think Wasp is on there, Prince is on there with Darling Nikki, Let Me Put My Love Into You by AC/DC's on there. I think We're Not Gonna Take It by Twisted Sisters also in that. That could be another discussion for another day. Maybe we could review the Filthy 15 one day for Hey Listen to This just as a lark. But my point being, yeah, this song is very much a song about what you said it is, female masturbation. And it's a very catchy song, like you said. And in the middle of the chorus, the one thing you didn't mention is that line, "I hope he understands," which is a very weird, like, pigeonholed, uh, ask for forgiveness from the Lord to say, listen, I hope you understand. I know I probably should be doing this according to your decree, but I mean, you got it, right? So that, I mean, it does add a little bit of a layer of the sort of guilt complex that a lot of people associate with this topic. It is not in my top three, however, because it came close. Like, this is easily my number four. It was between this and another song coming up that it was like, which one do I go with? And for me, it was catchy, but not quite catchy enough. And this idea of it being a song that's about, like, you know, sex, it doesn't feel like super sexy. It feels more rebellious than anything, which I respect. I'm totally fine with that. But I feel like there's supposed to be this air of, hey, you know, almost like a dance, like everybody do the twist, everybody do the she-bop, and it doesn't quite land in that register. But, I do like the song. It's in the top half of the album for me. It works.
And just to be perfectly clear and peek behind the curtain here a little bit for like my thinking, my review process with this album here, and when it came to this track didn't pop into my top three until my last spin of it, because I realized, oh man, I'm really digging the instrumentations. The lyrical, like, you know, lyric writing on here is absolutely hilarious. It's probably like the best lyric writing on the whole album. So yeah, like, you know, I bop with this song pretty hard. I mean, as much as one can bop without like actually bopping.
Right. Yeah. For content moderation's sake. So are you ready to move on to All Through the Night?
Yep, and I do believe it is your turn to kick us off here, which is, like, you know, what I had to be the back half of the album. But, like, you know, considering one of the tracks is basically like just an interlude, I can see why, you know, She-Bop technically leads off the back half of the album.
Right. Plus, again, if it weren't for the fact that I have this on vinyl and know that's where it starts, I probably would have just let you go with it being the halfway mark here. But that's aside the point. All Through the Night is probably the fourth and final hit on this album. And it's not one that a lot of people do remember, but it should be. Like, this song was written by Jules Shear, and it's more of like a traditional 80s love power ballad, and you have those cascading synth at the start of the song that that sort of set the tone. And Lauper's vocals here are really, really good. She sings very sort of reserved on the verses, and then when it gets to the chorus, her and whoever she is harmonizing with are like right in tandem, and it sounds really, really good. Lyrically, there's not a whole lot there. Basically, it's a love ballad about being with someone all through the night. Although I do like the way the chorus ends it with... I believe it's in the end, there is no end, or something to that extent. I thought that was a nice, like, little philosophical line to end things out and sort of, you know, push this song up into sort of a more spiritual level. And again, I probably butchered that quote. Brian, you can help me on that if you'd like. If not, that's fine. But all of that to say that even though there's not a whole lot lyrically, the tune is so strong and so well executed that this did bump She-Bop out of my top three to take the number 3 spot in my top 3.
So the actual line that ends off the chorus, you were right there. The actual line ends with, until it ends, there is no end. So reminiscent of, like, you know, years later down the road where Heisenberg in Breaking Bad says, we're done when I say we're done. But... Anyways, so, like, you know, you're obviously a lot higher on this track than I am because, like, it didn't land in my top 3. And, like, I would even put this on the back half of the album in terms of, like, ratings, only because, like, I really wasn't drawn into the tune as much as you were. Like, it's a nice song. Like, I do like the instrumentals, like the the cascading synths that you alluded to, and like for me, just the overall song though is it's decent enough. It just doesn't do enough to really just pop out or stand off compared to like what I've heard in the past with like 80s music as a whole. I do appreciate the dueling vocals here again. Like, there's plenty enough examples in this album here where just having that second vocal adds just enough texture to make the song and just the individual moments pop out a little bit more. But yeah, other than that, like the only other thing I got to really say about All Through the Night is like the synth solo. It's pretty decent. I do like that. The I will say though, like one thing that I did like gravitate towards to make me appreciate the track maybe a little bit more was the lyrics and how they have metaphors for life and street nightlife, and like you get lyrics like stray cat is crying so stray cat sings back, basically like alluding to the fact like hey, we're all lonely, and like one person just complaining, so the other person starts being like, hey, I'm right there with you, man. But yeah, outside of that, just I would just say on a songwriting standpoint, there wasn't enough for me to gravitate towards to be like, I really appreciate this track here. It lands in the good song, mushy middle for me, if you know what I mean.
I do understand what you mean. And again, I understand if not everybody takes this chorus as strongly as obviously Girls Just Want to Have Fun, or Time After Time, or even She Bop. And probably on another day, somewhere in the future, I might switch the other two around and put She Bop in the top three and knock this one out. But as it stands right now, I think this track is just a little hookier, a little more enjoyable than She Bop. But both good songs and both worthy of becoming hits, which they did.
So, moving over to the next track on the record here, and that is Witness. So, yeah, Witness. This is an interesting song, my dude. Like it almost kind of reminds me on a sonic landscape, and I could be coming out left field when I say this. It kind of reminds me of a reggae song, at least on a sonic template, and for me, my brain didn't comprehend that the way that it should have. I'm like, oh wait, this is 80s, but this is reggae, but I'm sure reggae existed in the 80s, but this is Cyndi and Lauper, and everything's like, it's very pop girly, but this, like, my brain was like it was doing circles, man. But this song, again, it's gonna land in that mushy middle, but not for the same reasons as All Through the Night did, because like on the instrumental front, things are actually pretty solid. Like, I did like the how the reggae foundation was laid out with the guitar riff doing the upbeat strokes and then having that synth doing that leading line. That was a nice thing for me. And I do like the call and response dynamic in the vocals, especially in the chorus. But yeah, sorry. And the instrumental breakdowns is nice. I like the dueling synth and guitar licks. That was a very nice thing. Not much here lyrically, I'm going to be honest with you. Like, just basically saying, hey, I don't want to be a witness. I don't want to be a witness. Maybe she had an issue being in the witness protection program. I don't know. But yeah, I did like the instrumentals. The lyrics weren't there, and if I had to be honest with you, dude, like towards the end of the track here, the vocals kind of grind on you a little bit. Like, and this was the other track that I kind of pinpointed as like the one sloppy vocal execution outside of Money Changes Everything. But the instrumentals are doing enough here to do some heavy lifting and carrying Cyndi over to the finish line where Witness doesn't end up as another bottom track for me. But yeah, I'm kind of indifferent to this track as well. We're running into a little bit of a lull here in the album with a couple of tracks that I'm just like, they're good songs, but they're not doing enough to stick to me.
Well, again, I think we both are kind of in that same bucket because we've already exhausted our top three, so nothing that comes after this is going to reach that in our minds. But My thoughts on Witness, my first note to sort of like tie together that little disconnect you were having earlier with is this 80s new wave or is this reggae? My first note was whoop whoop, this is the sound of the police, because this is a song that very much sounds like could have been recorded by the police. Very much that balance between reggae and new wave. And I agree with you. The instrumentals do a great job of processing that in its own right. But aside from that, you're right. There's really not a whole lot to this song aside from that. I didn't hate Cyndi Lauper's vocals on this track as much as you did. I honestly didn't even pay attention to them, honestly, because I was just kind of like, once I understood what the song was, I kind of just was like, okay, that's fine. It's all right. And that's what this track is. It's all right. It's not. It's very much an album track in every single sense of the word. The only thing that makes it stand out is, again, the fact they have that police-inspired reggae new wave mix. But once you realize what it is, it's just like, okay, so this is what you're doing. Cool.
Yeah, it's almost like a filler track, to be honest with you, where the instruments are like the main focus, and Cindy's just like, you know what? I'm just gonna, exist in the space here and like kind of just vibe with it. And for the most part, it's okay. Maybe if she kind of put a little bit more focus into like the vocals and the lyrics, maybe this track could have easily popped into like a top 3 for me. But yeah, Witness is, I think we've explained we explained enough what Witness is and how we don't really want to be like a huge fan of Witness, but we enjoy it though.
It is what it is. It is what it is.
So, you ready to move over to I'll Kiss You?
Yes, and I'm going to take a page out of your book and just come out and say it. This is my least favorite track on the album. And the reason for it is that, I'm sorry, like, the way you said that Cyndi Lauper's vocals on Money Changes Everything were annoying, I think that maybe 3 times as hard about this track, because there is a vibrancy that she brought to songs like She Bop and Girls Just Want to Have Fun that is recognizable, but here she pushes that way too far into the red. She puts it way too far in overdrive. It just seems way too rebellious, and it really doesn't need to be. Especially on the chorus when she says, I'll kiss you! I'll kiss you! Like, it just grinded my gears so hard, and I'm just like, stop. And unlike some of the other tracks, the instrumentation doesn't really do a whole lot to balance that out. Like, the backing vocals on the chorus, the little calm response things are kind of nice, but to me, this just seems like it's not really a track. Like, as I explained last week with Not the Doctor on Jagged Little Pill, if there's one track I really had to skip on this album, it would have been that, and it would be this one here. Like, I don't really need to hear this song ever again.
So, apparently I'm a lot higher on this track than you are, because the vocals actually didn't bother me at all. Like, I actually put it down as this is one of the better vocal performances that Cyndi does lay to tape here on the record. But the one issue that I kind of had, and it's maybe a minor nitpick, but it's a nitpick nonetheless, and I'll explain the reason why I have complicated feelings about this nitpick, is that the lyrics are kind of rapey, man. Like, you get lyrics like, I'll kiss you, gonna corner you, and not let you go. Like, come on. Like, it is kind of rapey, but, like, it's thanks to, maybe the next track here that I'm almost thinking that the intention with how that set of lyrics was laid to tape, it's almost like flipping gender dynamics on its head, where, back in the 80s and, before, the Me Too movement, it used to be, considered, I don't even know, the proper terminology, but it was more normal for men to not to take no for an answer when it comes to like relations with another partner. Nowadays, like like that stuff has completely changed, thank God. But maybe that was like a comment on that. But like even like taking a backing up here a little bit and looking at the whole song as a context here, it almost seems like on the lyrical front, it just seems like this song is basically about Cyndi getting nervous for going on a first date, and maybe she kind of gets drunk because she keeps talking about like last time she gave me love potion number 8. Maybe that's alcohol. I'm not sure, but yeah, the lyrics are just a little bit of a mess for me. But I kind of see a through line with the meaning there. But outside of the lyrical front, though, the chorus is decent. Kind of wish it would pop maybe a little bit more. It was just kind of tame, to be honest with you. And the other highlight, though, I will say, though, is like the synth lines throughout this track are really good. And I like how the instrumentals are adding stingers at the end of vocal phrases, like they're finishing off a musical thought. That was a nice touch for me. But yeah, overall, though, I kiss you, like, it's a mixed bag, but if I had to be honest with you, man, like I would probably put it like maybe top half in the album, maybe like 4. No, technically top half would be 5. So this would be 5 because this is a 10-track album, correcting my statement from earlier. But yeah, like I'll kiss you. I can dig it, but like I have mixed thoughts about it.
Yeah, and I understand that perspective that you brought up because, again, this was 1983, so maybe that sort of hard, stark flipping of gender roles might have been the point. But again, for me, the way that she sings just rubs me the wrong way. So even if there was some diplomacy behind that, or at the very least some cynic reversal roles, like it wouldn't have mattered to me because it just sounds so agitating. And the other thing too, you talk about Love Potion number 8. That probably my other point that I did not make earlier, which is that this song makes at least 2 references to other songs that are pretty pigeonholed in my honest opinion. So Love Potion number 8, Love Potion number 9, that's obviously a reference to the old song Love Potion number 9 that was made most famous by the Searchers. And the Tweedledee Tweedledum is a direct ripoff from Get Ready, made famous by the Temptations. And like I hear those, I'm just thinking, okay, we get it. You've listened to other songs before. Cool. Awesome. Nice. Proud for you. And that just, again, kind of rubbed me the wrong way, too. So, again, politics aside, I don't need to hear this song again.
All right, man. So I'm going to pivot on over to He's So Unusual. And, yeah, this is a short track, my dude. Like, I can't cut it any other way. And it's a bit of a whiplash, to be honest with you, because you get like throughout the whole rest of the album and even the track that follows this one, like it's very highly produced 80s material. This is just like, oh, hold on, we're gonna throw a monkey wrench in this here. We're gonna have this old timey production, and I'll be honest with you, I kind of dig it, but it's way too short for me to like really give it a decent rating. But yeah, like when I talk about like the ability for Cyndi to flip gender dynamics on its head, like you find it here too when she's talking like, when I want some lovin' and I gotta have some lovin', he says please stop it, please, he's so unusual. Like again, that's a little bit more of a direct flip on gender dynamics as compared to like what I found in I'll Kiss You. But yeah, it's an interesting song because it's just interesting placement where it just leads right into the next track. But He's So Unusual. It is what it is.
It is what it is. A couple notes on my end. First of all, I agree with you wholeheartedly that I dig the vintage production. I think it's really some of the better like faux vintage recordings I probably have heard in a pop album. and certainly better than whenever Panic at the Disco did it, as we talked about several weeks ago. This one just, again, it sounds like they dropped the needle on old Victrola and are playing the contents of it. And this is a cover too. I forget who wrote it, but I do remember it being from 1927 is when this song was initially written. So this song was, sort of thrown in there for, like you said, sort of flipping gender roles and also providing that little old-timey sort of flapper vibe. And then the way it transitions perfectly into the final song cannot be understated. It just cuts away from itself and boom, we go into Yeah Yeah.
So, yeah, you ready to finish off the review with with that discussion about yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The final track on She's So Unusual. And this track, honestly, is probably a little bit more abrasive vocally than I'll Kiss You. Like, she's really, like, going full on into the crazy meter. But at this time, it feels a little bit more intentional. It feels a little bit more fun. Like, the way she just sort of does that little, like, dolphin laugh at the beginning of that. Ah! Like, she's just going full on crazy here, and it's kind of appreciated. And even though the hook is only those two words, yeah, it's significantly better than I'll Kiss You. And lyrically, it doesn't really cohere all that well, but it doesn't necessarily have to. I mean, this is lyrically definitely an album track. Sonically, I would say it's a little better than that because, again, it just feels like, again, coming off of I'll Kiss You, such a strong and much better version of that. Her singing is pretty much right on, as crazy as it is. And the production's nice, the drums are tight, the synths are tight, the bass is tight. It's a strong, solid closer to this album.
So, yeah, there's one thing I got to mention here, like at least starting out the discussion of yeah for me, is the sax solo. Oh man, there's a sax solo, baby. Yeah, that's another Ryan Kern's musical kink, apparently. But yeah, for me, I'm not gonna add too much. I'm not gonna step on your toes too much when it comes to the discussion of yeah. But the chorus I found to be a little bit basic. I mean, it's not bad, but it's basically just Cyndi saying yeah a bunch of times. And like, I do appreciate though in the verses you get that call and response dynamic of the vocals. Like, again, that's always a fun time for me to appreciate. And one thing that I will say that did bring down the experience for me in terms of like finishing off the album, that little cutesy Jersey voice that we heard in the previous track, He's So Unusual, it creeps into the back half of Yeah, and you get like just her just, coming in at the spots here or there, and it's kind of out of pocket, and it's completely distracting for me. It did bring down the experience of Yeah for me, to the point that it could have maybe been another bottom track for me, man, because like it just basically kind of it didn't stick the landing. It kind of just crashed into like the mom and pop hardware store. Like, it basically had one job and it did not stick the landing, which is a damn shame. But yeah, overall though, outside of that, it's a solid way to end off the album. But yeah, that voice I couldn't get past though.
I kind of understand where you're coming from. It is distracting and it does feel a little pigeonholed, but at the same time, again, the way she starts the track with that sort of like wild wah, like you can kind of tell she's not trying to take this too seriously, and that the track itself is just gonna kind of be all over the place, and it's exactly that. But I appreciate it for what it was, and I appreciate this album for what it was, and now that we have talked about yeah, there's only one thing left to say.
We did it, man.
We did it. We found out why she is so unusual. So I'm going to go ahead and go first with my thoughts on this album. And this is a really solid album for me. Like, this is an album that a lot of people consider to be like one of the best albums of the 1980s, at least as far as mainstream is concerned. And I think it is pretty good. I mean, the first half of this album is fantastic, with songs like Time After Time and Girls Just Want to Have Fun. And in my mind, songs like Money Changes Everything and When You Were Mine help augment that. The second half does start strong with She Bop and All Through the Night, but kind of runs out of gas into album Tracksville. But even then, except for I'll Kiss You, like, they're all pretty solid and not necessarily stuff you would shy away from if you were listening to it in the background or in the foreground. And this, again, made Cyndi Lauper into a star and sort of put her mark on the 1980s and its culture, and deservedly so. So, all that to say, I'm going to give She's So Unusual a solid 8 out of 10.
And for me, overall, my experience with this album's pretty decent. Like, Time After Time, classic song. Like, I actually had a new appreciation for this track since we did the review here. And I was actually taken back by, like, discovering a Cyndi Lauper song that I can actually go back to and, like, really dig outside of her singles. So, like, She Bop, I fell in love with. Like, that's a fun song. And then, like, Girls Just Want to Have Fun, another classic song. And, like, there's plenty enough moments here where Cindy's trying stuff and it just seems like it's a good track. And, like, but if I had to be honest with you, like, outside of, like, maybe the first half of the album with the track highlights for me as they were, like, a lot of the songs that kind of have a mixture of good to okay to great. And I find myself, like, with at least the back half of the album, like, that run of, like, All Through the Night and Witness and, like, just a couple other tracks where I'm just like, okay, I think I've heard this before. I mean, like, it doesn't do enough to really, like, stand out, but it's not bad though. Like, it's pleasant enough to my ears. So I'm gonna come in a hair under you, literally a hair, by giving She's So Unusual by Cyndi Lauper a solid 7.5 out of 10.
Your 7.5 and my 8 combined together to average out to a 7.75 for She's So Unusual, because
Math
works, everybody. Now, I wanted to give my next album recommendation to be a album somewhat similar to this, which is Madonna's Like a Virgin from the very next year. But I have not listened to that album in full, so I'm not going to be able to do that right now. So instead, I'm going to go with an album from several years down the line, which is the album The Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess by Chappell Roan. And very much like She's So Unusual, this album comes at a time that, again, may have been designed to fight the traditional patriarchy, or designed to basically just be a big flashy pop album in the middle of whatever pop was going through. Because before MTV, before Thriller, like, music was kind of at a down point in the post-disco, post-punk, post-70s time. And albums like She's So Unusual brought that back. Similarly, The Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess did the same thing in bringing up pop music in 2024. And there's a lot of songs on there that are sort of similar in its powerfulness, both sonically and lyrically. So by default, I am giving my next album recommendation to be The Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess by Chappell Roan.
So you want to know a hilarious thing, my dude?
What's that?
My next album recommendation is Like a Virgin by Madonna.
Please. Thank you. Thank you for doing the research that I was not able to do in time.
And, like, when I thought about that album, I mean, I didn't listen to it prior to starting this review, but prior to, like, actually doing the audio review that we're doing literally right now, like, I listened to the album front to back, and yeah, for my first Madonna album, it's a very solid album. Like, songs like Material Girl, Like a Virgin, like, there's plenty enough, like, sonic comparisons that it's an easy, like, hey, if you enjoyed this album, go check out that album. So yeah, for me, easy recommendation, Like a Virgin by Madonna, released in 1984.
So if you have not listened to either The Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess by Chaperone or Like a Virgin by Madonna, we highly recommend that you check out those albums if you liked what you heard on She's So Unusual. So that leaves one last piece of business, Ryan.
Yeah, we have one more thing to settle up before we kick this review into bed. So, yeah, it is my turn to guide us into our next review, our next journey into Women's History Month. Our next DEI initiative that we've been currently, diving headfirst into. And for me, there's obviously two albums that I'm gonna have you choose between. But, for me, these are two albums that were released post 2000. Like I kind of, alluded to at the beginning of, our DEI initiative here when we ultimately went with Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill. So, this review is gonna be two albums that were released post 2000. And actually, post 2010 to even give you that much of a time frame. Not that that matters too much. And one album is by an artist that is relatively popular in the indie music blog sphere, nowadays, and I personally appreciate. And the other artist is a heavy figure in music and experimental music and indie music as a whole. So yeah, laying the groundwork right there. So the way I'm going to have you pick between these two artists is that I'm going to have you pick between the number of singles that these albums have produced. So the first album produced 4 singles. The second album produced no singles.
Wow. All right. Just because I don't want to run into the fear of picking an album that I want to cover next week when it's my turn, I'm going to go with 0 singles.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, and Matthew James Sturzik, Bjork has entered the chat.
Oh, here we go.
And the album that you've picked and I put up for, that I want to review for our next week's episode is her album that was released in 2015. It is her 8th studio album called Von Natura. It's an album that when I was getting into indie music at the time, this was my introduction to Bjork. So this is why we're covering Von Natura by Bjork. I'm so excited, my dude.
I am too. I know I'm not as familiar with Bjork as you are, but I am very keen to give this one a spin.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you've not checked out Von Natura by Bjork, make sure you hop onto your favorite music listening passage or your streaming device of choice before next week's review and check out that record. That way you can have opinions about what me and Matt are going to be saying about this album. And yeah, I heavily recommend it. It's a good album, though.
Yeah, and I hope to be on that same end, and hopefully we can talk about Bjork in ways that go past the typical thoughts that most people have when it comes to Bjork, which is that she's so unusual.